Hey guys, welcome back to today's college basketball pick video. In this video, we're going to talk about 5 matchups and who we think are going to be the better value bets against the spread in college basketball for March 14th, 2017. To get all of our pick video content, you can click that subscribe button, and any thumbs up on the video I greatly appreciate it. Also, you can head on over to our main website, stumpthespread.com. I'll throw a link to Stump the Spread down in the video description if you want to go over there and check out our daily free pick, or if you want to get our highest confidence premium plays across all major American sports, including all of our top confidence plays across these college basketball tournaments that are going to be going on over the next few weeks. So heading right on into this video, the first matchup I want to talk about is going to be between Ole Miss and Monmouth. And if you're interested in what games I'm going to be talking about in this particular video, I'll throw those down in the video description as well. So here we have the SEC against the MAAC. Obviously the SEC as a whole, much better conference than the MAAC, but the MAAC also has a very storied tradition. Heading into this one, we have a Mississippi squad that was expected to take a step back this year. They lost, their top scorer from last year, and he was one of the leading scorers in college basketball. But Mississippi has been able to spread the ball around to a few more different options this season. Unfortunately, not reaching their goal of making the NCAA tournament, but not all that surprising that Mississippi came up just short of that. Coming into this one against Monmouth, unfortunately for the Monmouth Hawks, they fall just short of making the NCAA tournament for the second year in a row. Monmouth had a bit more of a case last year to make it in as an at-large, given they beat a lot of high major schools in the non-conference last season where they didn't really accomplish that. This go-around, Monmouth still went on to win the MAAC regular season title for the second year in a row, but they came up short in their conference tournament, losing in the semifinals. Unfortunately for Monmouth, they're going to be without Michael Seaborn, who's one of their top players for this one. And also, if you remember from last year, Monmouth, they were one of the last teams not to make it into the NCAA tournament, so they got a 1 seed in the NIT, and in their first NIT game, they went on to lose. And not all that a surprise, given the fact that in these postseason tournaments, it really comes down to a lot in terms of motivation. A lot of these teams that didn't make the NCAA tournament that were really, expecting that to be their ultimate goal and not getting in, have a motivation gap with some of these other teams that, maybe they knew that far in advance they weren't going to make the big dance, and just getting into any kind of postseason tournament is something to really play for as they build off something positive going into the offseason, building towards next year. I think that's going to be the case here for Ole Miss. It's usually a situation where the higher major schools don't necessarily have as much motivation as some of these mid-major and lower major schools coming into these lower postseason tournaments like the NIT, CIT, and CBI. But for this one, we feel like Mississippi, with the spread going up to 3 points, especially with Micah Seaborn being out for Monmouth, they have a great shot at picking up the win against a Monmouth team that's probably not all that enthusiastic about playing in the NIT again this year. So we're going to go ahead and side with Mississippi getting those 3 points here as the better bet against the spread. Below that, we have a matchup between Indiana and Georgia Tech. This pegs the Big Ten against the ACC. At different times this year, both of these teams looked like they potentially had a chance to make the NCAA tournament, but they just were not able to grab enough wins on a consistent basis. Really a shame for Indiana. They, at one point, were ranked in the top 5 this season. They had wins in the non-conference against opponents like Kansas and North Carolina. Finally started to find their footing a bit towards the end of the regular season and into the Big Ten tournament, but just not enough to get over that hump. Indiana going into this one against Georgia Tech started as about a 5-point favorite. That has shifted down. Not, too much of a surprise in that situation, given the fact that Georgia Tech was very solid on their home court this season in ACC play. And Georgia Tech should have a bit more motivation coming into this matchup than Indiana. The Hoosiers are pretty crushed that they weren't able to get to the big dance this season, and doing well in the NIT wasn't all that high on this team's list in terms of what they wanted to accomplish this season. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, came out of nowhere to really have quite a bit of success in the ACC this season in their first year under head coach Pastner, really getting his young guys to perform well and above expectations. Georgia Tech getting the home court advantage in this one, and they've been really solid on their home court this season, and doing well in the NIT really would be a catalyst for the Yellow Jackets as they continue to try to build up their program under Pastner, and got a lot of young guys that are ready to, go into the offseason with some momentum and build towards next year. We do feel like Georgia Tech, even though the spread has shifted a bit, not in their favor, we're still going to take them, getting those 2.5 to 3 points here against an Indiana team that's probably going to be lacking motivation as the better bet against the spread in this one. Below that, we have Valparaiso and Illinois. Unfortunately for Valparaiso, they've been playing without their best player, Alec Peters. He's a guy that's one of the really most important players in college basketball to his particular team, averaging well over 20 points per game this year. And, Valparaiso had quite a bit of success in the Horizon again this season, but they came up well short in the Horizon postseason play. Valparaiso really wanted to get into that big dance, weren't able to do it in their postseason tournament, especially with Alec Peters being out, makes things a lot tougher for Valparaiso. Coming into this one on the road against Illinois, the Illini back in the middle portion of Big Ten play looked like they didn't have any shot at making the NCAA tournament, but down the stretch run of the regular season, Illinois got hot, and this is a team that, they can play different styles. They can light things up on the offensive end, or they can play more of a defensive battle, and that has made it so that this squad has ranked more in the mid-tier of college basketball in terms of their numbers on both sides of the ball. Illinois doesn't really excel in any one particular category, but they are going to have the best player on the court today with Malcolm Hill, and Hill really probably wanting to perform well here for Illinois, and his head coach, who's had to battle through some situations in recent years, especially with this Illinois squad as a whole. Over the last couple of years, has really had to fight back on player suspensions or injuries or all these different things. But this team was playing a lot better down the stretch, even though they did not look good in the Big Ten tournament. Behind their home court advantage today, going against a Valparaiso squad that's without their best player, we feel like Illinois giving the 8.5 points is going to be the better value bet in this matchup. Heading on down here, we have College of Charleston versus Colorado State. Really liked watching this College of Charleston squad this season. A very stout defensive team. They love slowing things into the half court and leaning on their defense. They've had a top 10 ranked defense throughout pretty much the entire regular season. It'll be interesting to see if Charleston will be able to impose their style of play here against Colorado State. It's a bit easier to impose a defensive half-court battle than, teams that play up-tempo necessarily. Colorado doesn't necessarily play, up-tempo all that often, but Colorado State, a very well-coached team. They really came out of nowhere in terms of what they were able to do in the Mountain West Conference. Not a team you heard all that much about back during the non-conference, but the Rams were able to continue to improve throughout the regular season, which is really a testament to their solid coaching staff that they have over there with their program. We expect this to be a pretty competitive matchup here and probably a little bit lower scoring just given the style that Charleston likes to play. Charleston has really traveled quite well this year, and, defense always travels easier than offense, and we feel like that's going to be the case again today. We're going to go ahead and side with Charleston to keep things competitive and close in this one, getting those 3.5 to 4 points. The Cougars feel like the better value play in that matchup. And just one more game that I want to touch on in today's video. We have Richmond and Alabama. Not a whole lot was expected out of Richmond necessarily in the A-10 this season. They were predicted to be more of a mid-tier team in their conference. They performed better than expected, and, they have a guy like Klein who's one of the better players in the A-10, but, Richmond, they fell just short over there in the A-10 tournament in the semifinals. Coming to this one on the road against the SEC squad Alabama. I really like the direction that this Alabama program is headed right now under head coach Avery Johnson. As soon as Avery Johnson took the head coaching job at Alabama, he instantly made this a very credible basketball program in the SEC. Alabama performed better than I was expecting them to do this year in the SEC, and, as Johnson continues to get his guys and his recruits into the program, things are definitely looking up for this team heading down the line here. Alabama, a very strong defensive team. Pretty solid home court advantage, especially in a situation like this where the Alabama basketball fans haven't necessarily had a ton to cheer about in recent years. Getting into the NIT with a intriguing young team that has the possibility to continue to grow in the future. We do expect some pretty solid support here for the Crimson. And this is another situation where a high major team like Alabama, isn't necessarily disappointed that they didn't make the NCAA tournament. They weren't expecting to make the big dance this year, and that really gives a young and up-and-coming squad like this, the motivation to perform in something like the NIT as they try to get that postseason experience as they go into the offseason and build towards next year. So in this one, we're going to go ahead and side with Alabama, giving the 7 to 7.5 points as the better bet against the spread for this matchup. So that's going to wrap up the games I wanted to talk about for today's games. Again, if you want to get more of these pick video college basketball pick videos that I release on a daily basis, you can hit that subscribe button. Any thumbs up on the video are greatly appreciated. And to get our daily free pick, over at our main website, you can check out stumpthespread.com, and I'll throw a link to Stump the Spread down in the video description. So thanks, guys, for stopping on in, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.